This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
There's roll call back from our break.
Eric Goldstein here.
Lois Scott present.
Megan Harvey here.
Ben Hersey here.
Sarah Hunter present.
Nicole Chappelle here.
And Cindy Kuzinski here. So thank you and welcome everybody. We are welcoming Roland Joyle tonight. Thank you for coming. We have a series of questions. There might be some follow-up questions. And then at the end, you'll be able to tell us whatever you think we left out. So I have the first question. All right. So what do you see as the special mission and goals of an interim superintendent? And what can you do as an interim leader to prepare for a smooth transition and success for the next leader?
I think this is a great opportunity for you and for me. Coming off a career in education, all in the Pioneer Valley, here where I know my superintendent and most administrators, legislators, politicians. Special mission being still doing the job of a superintendent for the year. It's not, the title interim suggests, right? Obviously, there's a finite amount of time, beginning and an end to it in that sense. But I expect to do the job, not to just come and kick back, sit in the chair and sign checks, which I don't even do, right? In that sense, it's a job. I've been working my entire life. I've been working since I was a kid. Coming to a point in my life right now where I'm able to transition. As you're well aware of, I spent my whole life in public schools, albeit except for 1 year when I did my grad year, and that was because it was very cheap because I was resident director at Springfield College for my master's on that one. But otherwise, public elementary, high school, and public colleges throughout that. And one of the things that I think helps progress, my parents were both educators, my mom and dad. And my mom, taught before I was born and then stayed home for 8 of us and then went back in the end. And out of the 8, I will say, we used to always say that none of us were ever pushed into it. It was a great lifestyle in that sense. 5 of us were in it. Now there's 7 of us in the business because most recently, one of my sisters is an occupational therapist in the school system now, and my brother is a school resource officer in one of the towns. So 7 out of the 8 of us, so we kind of joke now, we're in public education in that sense. And you get into education to give back, right? To give back and for students so that students can grow and that students can progress. So I see the special mission of helping maintain where you're going. You've already worked. You've done a lot of the work already in the sense of laying goals, mission, vision. I have your plan here, your budgetary work. All of that is, obviously things can progress over time, but maintaining and helping the people who are doing the hard work. The teachers are on the front row, right? We know that. They're down there. They're doing all the hard work. As I sit here and get ready, came in a little early, right? We kind of joked about early is on time is late, right? My kids play sports and you're early in that sense. And you get a little. Here I am in the hot seat. First time I've been in an interview in a long time, right? I feel like I'm kind of at the start of a swim meet again. When back in my days of swimming, when you're on the starting blocks and they're ready to pull the gun. So you guys seem like a nice friendly group and you're making me at ease in that sense. But I want to help maintain what's going on and what can we do to support our principals and our teachers out in the schools and get them the things that they need and give them the, just the visibility and the good public relations that are happening. And there's no doubt, there's a little monkey on the table, right? In this sense, you've gotten a lot of publicity recently. Some would say no. Sometimes they have that saying, right? No publicity is bad publicity. Right? In that sense, you have a lot of good things going on in the town and in the city, in the schools. To get that focus back on what's going on in there. And I think the special mission, you'll find that my leadership styles, we talk about this over the next, however many minutes we're here, is one of really, I'm comfortable in the limelight, but I don't seek it in that sense. I kind of joke with people like, you know, hopefully you've called some references, or you will in that sense, and I can supply letters. I know we did some different things to get me to this point here already, but it gets to be the sense of, you know, here I am. I'm here to support people. I'm not here to take any of that limelight. If need be, I can. You know, I kind of joke with people, if you Google me, right, you're not going to find a lot. I mean, everybody Googles everybody in that type of sense there. Hopefully you'll find that I've pushed all the things off to the students in the school and the people who are doing the hard work. At times, there's no doubt they want to talk to the superintendent, right, the mayor, a school committee member, and we do that as well too, but never forgetting to acknowledge the people who are doing the work. So I see the special mission as doing the job of a school superintendent. And I've been fortunate to hold a lot of jobs over my career, starting from as a substitute teacher when I was doing my master's degree. Classes were at night. As I mentioned, I was a resident director at that point for the college, substituting in the daytime. Doing that, fortunate to become a science teacher and a vice principal, then a principal, assistant superintendent. Along the way, I've coached, been a class advisor, run the National Honor Society. So I've done a lot of different jobs. And I think that I can, you know, relate to what's going on in your school system and what's going on with all the teachers in that sense. Second part of your question talks about, or asks, what can I do as an interim to prepare for the smooth transition and success of the next leader? Start taking notes on day one. I've already done that. Once I announced that I was leaving where I currently am, started writing notes every day. I have a list. So for the new person to come in, that's always a tricky spot, right? When somebody new comes in, because sometimes even myself, when I've gone into places, I want to start fresh, give everybody a fresh start, and do that. So what I've done with my notes is not done notes necessarily on people, but on projects or things that are happening. Because I would expect that somebody would come in and give everybody a fair shot in their job, just like you would want me to do coming into this role, that everybody starts and has a first impression, right? You only get one chance to make a first impression. I don't want that first impression to be from what I heard from somebody else in that sense. So I'm leaving great notes for whomever will take over in my spot, which will be decided tomorrow night in that sense. And hopefully I can, have some meetings with them and transition and let them know here's where we stand on all these projects. We have a lot of great things going on, just as I imagine you do here. And I would start preparing that list, knowing that somebody else would be coming in and help prepare them for that.
Thank you.
Good evening. How would you maintain morale during an interim situation or transition?
Visibility. Laura, you'll find that I'm very visible and develop relationships. You're going to hear that a little tonight. Relationships, getting around, visibility. I can tell you that everybody knows who I am, where I am right now. I get around, as you are familiar with, imagine with my resume. We do a lot of different things, participate in career tech at the collaborative that I work at. We have special education programs. A lot of my job is dealing with transportation issues as well too, running 250 buses and 4 garages. All mechanics know me. I can walk into any garage. I could go there tomorrow morning. I know everybody's name. They know me. A couple weeks ago, I rode a bus. I do that every year. I don't do that all the time. I'm not trying to tell you to do that. I don't drive a bus, but I do ride on a bus and do the rounds with different drivers each year in different garages. Rode a bus a couple weeks ago. It was early in the morning. Showed up at Friday morning at 6 o'clock and asked the garage manager, put me on a bus. And they go, what are you doing here? So, all right. I'm like, and they know. I just show up and walk around. And I will say that though, when I do that, sometimes people think, oh, well, you're trying to be sneaky, you're trying to catch people. No, you can talk to the people who work with me. My showing up is not that. Nobody's getting written up or, consequence, things like that. No, my showing up is to show that I wanted to learn what you're doing and to see what's happening and to see what you need. Because I find you get a lot more out of true conversations by walking into the garage and talking to the mechanics and finding out that, the other garage has this big tire iron. I don't even know what to call it, that helps change tires. but one of the garages didn't have it. I walked in there a year ago. A gentleman was really working hard, sweating. It was a hot day. And then sometimes they'll go and help each other out at different garages. And he'd mentioned, hey, one of the other garages has this big tire iron that I could do this job in seconds versus killing myself. Went back, talked to people, I don't know, $100, something like that, $200. Buy that, job becomes easier. I'm not saying we can throw money at everything. I understand that. And sometimes, my business partners come around with me and say, all right, we know when Roland's been out there because, the phone calls me. He said we could get this, or he said we could do that, because we all know that there is a little money sometimes extra for things that can make people's jobs easier. And sometimes we just have to ask them, what do they want? And talking about morale, you can do that. Get out there. What do people need? We may not be able to buy them. Listen, you just bought them a nice brand new school recently. That is beautiful. When I had that tour down there. And your high school is great as well, too. Fairly new in terms of recently what we talked about, school buildings in that sense. So there's a lot of great things going on. One of the other things I would work on to maintain morale is, as I mentioned, kind of just briefly touched on before, good press and get some good visibility. I know that you have social media pages, trying to keep those going, dealing with, you have the reminder out here just as I walked in. They are always looking for stories. They call all the time and trying to get on a schedule of having each school do something every other one week a month or something like that. One idea. You have so many ideas going on out there, right from your sidewalk art festival at Mountain View that was out there to your We the People. I know the commissioner came out. I mean, just getting press on all of those good things, but reminding people again, here's what's happening in the schools. Hey, what happened did happen. There's no doubt about it, but there are a lot of good things that are happening that we just need to get back to business on.
How do you see your role in working with the community in the district during the interim superintendent?
I think the community needs access to me. You'll find that I have an open door policy, and I really do hope that you get a chance to, as I mentioned, either speak to some of my references, talk to other people, because we know everybody knows everybody. And you're probably not just talking to the 4 people I listed on those references. You're going to hear from others about me, and they're going to let you know that that I'll meet with the community and I'll be out there. I'll be visible. I know that kind of touches on a little of some other sections, but I'll save some of that for after. But having an open door, possibly doing sporadically throughout the year, some meet and greets at night, whether it's switching it up at different times because different people have different schedules, whether it's coffee in the daytime or lunch or doing things at night. We used to have a great community partnership when I was in Chicopee, and I would take our students of the month out to, I say lunch. I'd take them out. It was sponsored by John's Pizzeria. He's a great gentleman down the road, and the kids thought it was the best thing. Texas sliced bread. Sometimes you can do little things in life that mean a lot, and they go pretty far. Now, it took some time out, but I didn't mind it. I went down. I was students of the month every month. We ate pizza. They had a great time, but then you get to find out really what's going on. And that's what's going on. So I know that's what the students, but in terms of the community, the same thing. Being out at events that you're having. You have the chaos coming up, your cultural chaos. You have a great arts district. Haven't spent, in all honesty, a ton of time in my life in Easthampton. Have come up here for the registry with my sons. In that sense, because your lines are a lot shorter. And you probably hear that all the time, right? But I do know what's going on. Like I said, as being a lifelong educator in the Valley here, that you have a lot of great things going on, and the community still has to move on, right? They're still going to be engaged. They're still paying. They're still paying taxes. They still want great things to go on in their schools. They want property values to keep moving. From what I've heard when I was on my visit here, they are moving up. And it's tougher, right? It's always tougher to buy a house, and as interest rates go up. But those are good. I kind of say politely, they're good problems to have, right? When you have a nice draw, that people want to live in your community, because people want the best for their kids. We know that. we always talk about this with my administrative team, like for all these parents who send their kids to us, they don't leave the good ones at home. They send the best that they have, right? And we need to take them and do the best that we can with the best that they have. And that's it. And seeing what the community wants for their children. And they've spoken. You have great programs. You have great athletics, arts, right? Drama programs, academic programs, you have advanced placement programs. You're doing a lot of great things here, and you're seeing the results of that by people wanting to come into Easthampton. So continuing to hear what the community wants, hear from them in different ways. Obviously working with you, your elected officials, you're hearing from them. And I can only imagine during this time, probably on a daily basis. And this has probably turned into a almost a full-time job for you. It's amazing that you can keep up, right? Whatever else you do outside of this. And I know that they talk about this the superintendent search fatigue. When I was going around to the school, that okay, now you guys gotta take me around, take me through another trip in that sense. But they were really good about it. Obviously, you went through a big process a few months ago, and now you're still doing it again. And at some point, it will wrap up for you, and you'll be happy. But I want to hear from the community and what's going on and see what they want, and then working with you to set our priority for the next year.
I have a follow-up, Cindy.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, when you were reviewing the status of the district, and you've done a great job of listing all the wonderful things that are happening, I'm wondering if you identified anything that you might be interested in bringing to the district that we aren't already implementing, or ways that you saw we could improve.
Yeah, I think you got to hire me for that one first. Can't give away all my secrets right now, but in that sense, yeah, I think we got to take a look. Obviously, some of the standardized test scores in your grades 3, 4, and 6, you're above the state average for meets exceeds expectations. In 5, 7, 8, and 10, just a little below. Some are tied. Some are just below. That's only MCAS. We know that's only one indicator, right? In that sense, indicators aren't everything, Laura, either. If you ask me to raise these indicators, right, or at the high school, hey, raise the average SAT score. Oh, I could do that. And your high school principal can do that too, by only having the best kids take the SAT. But that's not what we want. So they don't tell a tale for everything. And we have to explain that to the public in that sense. You see the U.S. News and World Report, right? Rankings of high schools and things like that. The Boston Globe after the MCAS will be in the Boston, everybody will be, right? Ranked 1 to 378 or somewhere in that rank. I've been there, and I've been near the little lower end, in that sense, being in an urban district, in that sense. But people still like their local schools. You know that. You talk about these studies by Delta Kaplan. They do studies every year about people liking their neighborhood schools. You could pick inner city districts in America, and the people down the street love their local schools right down the street, even though statistically, many of them are doing terrible and tanking. But their teachers care about them. They're doing the best they can. They're feeding them, right? They're giving them education. So I think, looking at some of those parameters, are there things we need to improve on? We know there was some learning loss with COVID. We understand that, and some regression, but we can't make that excuse for everything in that sense too. We can't all of a sudden take everybody and move everybody back and just repeat years. We need to keep moving and meet students where they are. So I'd work with your principals to find out are there some students that we can meet and try to move along and progress in different ways.
Thank you.
How would you begin your work as our interim superintendent? Whom would you seek out, and what information would you want or need?
I would seek out all of you to start. I know who I work with and for in that sense. But I meet with a lot of people. I do a lot of meetings. And information I would seek, I do a lot of document reviews, a lot of the documents that you already have, right, from your, I didn't bring it with me today. I printed out your big budget. I loved your little summary. That was great. But I have your huge, that was a big one too, a big budget in that sense, right? Looking at all the schools, improvement plans, the mission statements, district goals, you name it. Any of the safety plans that are out there, the NEASC with the high school, all those types of reports. I read their program and studies already. So a lot of data, right? Just to kind of get a feel for where we stand. And one of the nice things that I think I have going for me is that I've been in the area, but I've been in a lot of roles, and I've seen some different districts, albeit just to maybe give you a little parameter, not really jumping around. I've been promoted twice in 2 districts, which I think, shows that I have some staying power and that each district has appreciated. And I'm glad to say that the work that I've done from a teacher to a vice principal in Springfield at the same school, and then from a principal to an assistant superintendent in Chicopee. So there's a lot of work to do in that sense, but I want to do a document read, and then I want to start really meeting with a lot of people. So I would meet with the mayor, who obviously has a pulse on the city, what's going on. I'll work with our school committee members. I kind of use my touch in. I don't want to jump into number 5, so I'll kind of lay off on that one, on my mode into there. But I would seek out really everybody in this building. I would meet with, in the first, it's a smaller town. I say smaller town in a polite way, in a nice way that, about 16,000 residents. Right? I think I can get to the people we need to get to in a fairly brief amount of time, given obviously summer vacations, things like that. But everybody from the police chief, fire chief, the DPW director, right? Different planning, like the planning board. So I saw the planning board, or I don't want to say who I saw, but somebody from the planning department was at Mountain View the day I was there, and they were doing erosion control with the kids out in the back. And they had a great, nice setup out there. And I thought that was great how you're working, collaborating. Your city departments will go over to your school, obviously give up their time and teach the students some knowledge in that sense. So see all that. I mean, obviously, when we're doing snow day calls, it's not going to be me on my own, right? You're going to talk to DPW, police, the mayor, people who are on the ground, letting you know, your maintenance director. Yeah, well, listen, and people don't realize that it's not just the amount of snow that's out there. Can we get the school lots done? Do we have private contractors doing that, or doing that our own? There's not enough plow drivers. We don't want people riding over the snow and packing it down. A lot of decisions come into play. So I ended up working with a lot of people, doing a lot of document reviews within the first 60 days. And then having further questions, we do a lot of meetings, save what I do with the school committee in a minute for that next one I can see coming up.
That's your cue.
That's our cue. How would you work with the school committee to set goals for your interim superintendency?
I work with you, and we work with some group meetings, depending on times. Obviously, we have regular school committee meetings, subcommittee meetings. But what I'd also like to do, given the time constraints that you all have, and obviously your daytime jobs, whatever you're doing in that sense, is at least have some brief conversations each month with you individually throughout the month. So it could be 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, touching base. If you need more time, I can give you more time as needed too. But I would obviously work with you and determine what types of contact you want, how much you want to hear from me. In that sense, is there such a thing that you would tell me that there's too much? Hey, yeah, we're going to see you at the next meeting. We'll talk to you before that or something like that. Or no, I want to know what's coming at the next meeting, and we can talk prior to. I'm accessible. You'll have my cell phones. I would assume, hopefully, I would have yours. In that sense, I'm a no surprises kind of guy. In that sense, you don't want surprises. I don't want surprises. In that sense, if things are happening, we're gonna let you know. I'd rather have you tell me. Well, you don't even have to tell me. You can take the information. It's kind of like sending emails or something. You send emails. You don't need to just hit delete. You don't have to tell the person you didn't really read it. But I'd rather have you get the information than not get it. In that sense, you can determine, right, if you want that, or if you need more, then you can call or we can talk. But you don't want to know that something's happening at a school, or that a reporter's going to call, or that you're going to get a call from an angry parent because something happened here or there. So depending upon your involvement, which obviously we would get to know each other and determine, what you're looking for out of me and what I was looking for out of you. And I would make sure that you're covered, because we got to take care of each other.
Thank you. All right. How important is it for an interim superintendent to be visible in the schools and in the community?
And how is this different from a superintendent on a longer term contract?
It's a great question. I don't think it's any different. I'm a superintendent. You're here to do the job. And that's, I can't imagine politely you're gonna pay me any, I say me or anybody else, right? Any less than you're gonna pay somebody else. It's not like, you're not telling you the halftime job, come in at noon every day, something like that. No, you're gonna get work out of me. So I expect to do the job. I'm the superintendent. To be visible, as I mentioned, that's one of the things I do. Talk to all the places I've been. I walk around, I know people, I've served lunch in cafeterias, as I mentioned, I've ridden buses, I can walk into garages, I can walk into any school. I mean, you have just over 100 professional staff, right? 1,400-ish students. For me, very manageable. I almost had 100 staff at Chicopee High School, and a professional staff, almost 150 when I went to non-professional. Given some time, once we get back to school, I would almost bet I'd know everybody's name. Give me a yearbook, start studying that pretty soon. I did that before I even started being principal. You get that yearbook, almost know every staff as they walk through the door, almost, right? But given time, within a month or two, I would anticipate knowing all the teachers and knowing that when I walk into any school, if I was walking down the hallway, that I would be able to walk in, hopefully, principals or somebody walking through, that I would know what classrooms I'm walking into and who's there and what they're doing. And then starting to know about people and getting relationships. You know, years ago, right, nobody wanted to know anything about anybody. And I worked with teachers who didn't want to live in cities that they taught in, and they didn't want to shop and said, oh, I don't want anybody to see me at the grocery store or at Walmart or Target or something like that. Why? Because they might know you're human, in that sense. And right, in the teachers actually need food too, right? They need to buy things at stores. So one of the nice things we did years ago in terms of helping our visibility, helping our communication was, this is years ago, but started small in our communities when I was at Chicopee High School in advisories. And I know that this, we're talking about 20 plus years ago. So it's not a new concept today in that sense, but it was then. There's no doubt. And we had teachers who thrived in it, meeting with students for 15, 20 minutes twice a week, doing some different scenarios. And then we had others who it was like pulling teeth to try to have them have a conversation with students without a script. And we gave the script if they wanted different things, different topics to talk about, different days. As you can imagine, most people who are going to sit in front of you right now, well, we could talk somebody's ear off in that sense. Put me in a room with kids. I had great interviews with your middle and high school students. They asked very thoughtful questions. Well, they took notes. You should have seen them taking notes and ranking me. I didn't realize I was walking in there. I'm sure you're going to get those after. I'm like, oh, here we go, right? I thought it was a day for me to get to know everybody. And, I knew I was on show there, right? In that sense. But they were well thought out questions. But then I asked them a couple questions in that sense and about what they do. But they're really active at both levels. They do a lot in your school and they do a lot out of your school. But that's the best part about kids. Right? The busier they are, I find the better they do in that sense. If you keep them engaged, and you have a lot of great programs going on, not just within your school, but within your city and your town for that. So I'd be visible at those community events. Can you go to everything? No, you and I know we can't get to everything, but we can get to a lot. Not just school events, but different events that are happening in the town. And when you're out there, that's when you hear a lot from parents. And I've been to football games where you're standing at the fence and you think you're watching a football game, which you are, and somebody saddles up right next to you to chew your ear off, right? And let you know that, hey, does it sound familiar to anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Hey, I just want to let you know, what do you think's going on over there at that school, right? This and that. And yeah, I can look into that for you, or, and you know that not everything you hear, right? There's always, what I always kind of say, right? There's a couple sides of the story, right? There's one version, the other version, and sometimes the truth may be somewhere in between in there to try to find out. But it's giving people time as well. I find that one of the biggest things that people want is time. And that's something I've been able to teach my administrators, and, and I learned. I was fortunate to work for, early in my career, a couple of great women. One at Putnam High School, Dr. Southworth, and then one, Barbara Cove, who hired me as superintendent in Chicopee. And really helped mentor me, and helped move me along in different ways. And one of the lessons was giving time. And I think I've done a nice job passing that on to people who've worked with me, vice principals, you name it, principals. Because I find that a lot of that next step, when somebody calls and wants an appeal, sometimes they don't always want that decision overturned. They just want to have their say. And they want to be heard. And they want you then to articulate why you have made a decision. Because I always say that we may not always agree, but at least you'll know where I stand and why I stand there. And at times we do have to make hard decisions, right? We all know that, where we have to make hard decisions where we can't make everybody happy. I mentioned to your high school group, I did a quick little lesson on the board there on the bell curve. When you make decisions in life, right? There's that little bell curve you might remember. Any decision you could make, right? As a principal, as a superintendent, as a mayor, as a school committee member, you know that. I don't tell you, 20% of the people are going to love what you do. Best things in sliced bread, you could do no wrong, whatever you do. 20%, even if you gave out $300 bills, aren't going to be happy because they would want 10 tens instead of a $100 bill, because they wouldn't think they could spend a $100 bill anyway. And that 60% in the middle, you're just going to kind of go along with what you do. Like, yeah, hey, you're the superintendent, or you're the school member, you're smart, you're supposed to make that decision anyway. And that was a good one in that sense. So trying to hear from people, hear what's going on, being seen out there, visible in the community, going to your games, to your concerts, your events. I've always been there. You've talked to anybody back in my days at Putnam, Chicopee High, at the Collaborative right now, with our advisory dinners, with our open houses. I'm at them all, being out there. Because sometimes that's the only time other people are free to see or ask me if they have questions. I mean, they're busy. I know people are busy and they have jobs in their life. So, we're happy that they're taking time out to go see their children at these events. Maybe kill two birds with one stone. You got some questions? Open up. I'm not going to duck anybody on that one. So I'd be out there.
Right. Describe your vision of a successful exit plan for an interim superintendent. What do you hope to accomplish and pass on to the selected longer-term superintendent?
A successful exit plan, as I touched on slightly before, would be leaving them in a great place. Person coming in with, whether it be file folders, I say the old, still some paper. I'm still dealing with some paper, but electronic folders as well too, right? Doing that of where we stand on these projects and standard operating procedures, and having some conversations with you throughout this school year while we're doing our regular meetings or in between meetings, getting some things done so that you just don't have to redo it all over next year. Maybe we can use this time as I learn you and you learn me to create some roles and some pathways for the new person. So when they come in, yes, you can still do that. You'll still have to learn their ways, don't get me wrong, but at least I can leave them, with a path to go forward. And let them know that, yes, I can only imagine this process potentially would start late fall, early winter in that type of scenario. And in a perfect world, right, you'd have somebody by, I don't know, late winter next year, sometime in that sense. I don't want to pretend to make your timeline, but I can help you later on if you need that. But then knowing that if somebody who is in place at some point in the early spring or something like that, I can start transitioning. I know they probably still have a real job, but let me tell you, anybody who's going to start to be a superintendent, while they're doing their job, and they'll still give that, they'll have extra time to know what's coming on. So on July 1st, it's not just like you're walking into a stack of folders in that sense. So I think a successful exit plan for myself would be to prepare the new superintendent for success with you and to let them know, hey, here's what we're working on. These are the goals that the school committee has. Hey, this is how Laura likes to be contacted. She loves email or something like that, right? And Sarah likes texting. Don't call her before 9 though, because
Well,
maybe she's an early right. I'm kind of joking with you, Sarah, but you never know in the sense of what you get to do. That we can get some of that out of the way for the new person, and that way they can hit the ground running. So I hope they have a great transition. So that the long-term superintendent really can come in and just get to work and know what's going on already.
Thank you.
what is your approach for engaging in discussion when people disagree?
Sarah talked about that a little before in the sense of it's hearing people out. I want to hear all sides of the story. And one of the things that I do when people disagree is, and I don't think it's a downfall. I think it's actually turned out to be a positive. Sometimes people would say that maybe I've taken a little time on decisions in that sense, but I'd rather be, I guess you'd say criticized, but I don't think I'd really get criticized too much. But or have somebody say maybe I've taken just a little too longer versus making a rash decision that didn't have enough thought in it. But my approach is to many times get people involved, get them to the table. So if the people disagree, whether it's they disagree with me or having two people together, a lot of times people haven't talked to each other. So when you get to be in leadership roles, and you're all leadership roles, the mayor must hear a lot from city heads and things like that. People will come to you kind of like your mom or dad in that sense and say, so-and-so said something, and they're not doing this, and they're not doing that. One of the first things I always do is say, have you talked to them? Well, no, they're not going to listen to you. Well, we don't know that, right? In that sense. And when they disagree too, is I've generally sent people back to where they've come from. So for example, if we had people who were disagreeing in schools, for example, and they all of a sudden call it central office. I'm going to tell you the first thing I said, if you talk to whomever up the chain, if you talk to the vice principal, if you talk to the principal, oh no, I haven't talked to them. Well, you know what? Let's go back there. Because I'll tell you, I've appreciated that from the leaders I've worked with in life. I was a high school principal for 18 years, which is a long run in that sense. I hated, right? If somebody would go over my head to my boss, do you think I want the assistant superintendent knowing our dirty laundry? No, right? Not that, but I want to keep it in-house, right? And see if I can resolve it here. And not have somebody go up to the assistant superintendent and say, I don't know, the vice principal suspended my student and my kid, and it was unfair, right? I want to appeal it. And they go straight to the assistant superintendent. Everybody thinks they want as you know, when you walk into a school, everybody thinks they want the principal. They may not be the appropriate person to answer that question. Similarly, they call central office, they may all want the mayor. In that sense, she may not be the one to answer all the questions for that. It may be a department head or somebody else can be the better person for that. So one thing I've always done is move the problem or the disagreement back to different steps to see if it can be resolved. And if it can't, at some point we know sometimes they can't be resolved, right? But then at that point, I'll get a call from the principal saying, hey, heads up, like I would do to you. Probably gonna get a call from this parent. They're not too happy with something that happened. We explained it, this and that. They're still not happy. And then I would meet, find out the facts, try to put people together, and then explain. Many times we have to stick by our decisions, if they're proper decisions, but not be afraid to change if somebody hasn't seen the other side of it too. So what I look for in a lot of this discussions is sometimes some pre-discussion. In that sense, from your principal, hopefully asking me some advice. Hey, have you ever dealt with this? I think one of the things that I bring to you is a career in different size towns and cities, dealing with obviously Springfield, should be some pretty good sized cities, but now with the collaborative, suburban, even rural towns that we're dealing with. And I've seen a lot. You see a lot of different things that are happening, whether it be, unfortunately, altercations sometimes between students. You tend to see those, right? Whether it's a fire alarm pulled. I've dealt with a lot of situations that sometimes you don't see as frequently kids are still kids. I will tell you that. They are still doing the same thing in Springfield that they're doing in Easthampton and they're doing in Southfield. They are kids. Sometimes though, the frequency differs depending on where you are. So I've been fortunate to see a lot and have a lot of experiences. Some good, some not so good. I've dealt with the death of a teacher. I've dealt with the death of students in that sense. We've also dealt with students winning national competitions and going on like your band just won 2 gold medals in chorus at the festival a week or so ago in that sense. So there are a lot of good things, and I think I can bring that to the district, having some of that background knowledge on how to deal with a lot of these issues.
Give an example from your life when you did or said something that you later regretted. Did you recognize it was a misstep, and or did someone bring it to your attention? What did you learn from that experience, and how did you make amends?
I was the principal at Chicopee High. We had, this is going to be early 2000s, so now, almost 20 years ago now. Boys wore maroon gowns, males wore maroon, females wore gold, and that was it, right? No ifs, ands, or buts. We had a young lady one year who didn't want to wear gold because she just liked the color or something like that. So we let her wear maroon. But they still sat in different sides, right? The maroon and gold, and all their different rows, every other row, that type of, always symmetrical, right? Back in the days, right? So then we started to sense that, you know, maybe this isn't really the way things should be. So I made a decision, or I vocalized that we were going to go to all one color gown. And I did it with a little input from some kids in a small group, but not enough of a sample size, I guess you would say. And in hearing from others, like my student, like my school council, parents, things like that, my advisory council, you name it, didn't go over too well at all, like a lead balloon, right? In that sense. No, tradition. That's all we heard. Tradition. We should be high and maroon and gold, and that is the way it will be. And this is the way I graduated in 1970, and my parents graduated in the 50s and the 30s, and that's what everybody wore. So in the end, I scrapped it for that year. Let it sit on the back burner, learned a good lesson in life about foreshadowing, which I do a lot of now, a ton of it right now, and pre-conversations, obviously, as I mentioned, with the school committee and leaders, different things. Then a couple of years after that, it started to come back, and actually an idea kind of surfaced from our LGBTQ group and some different diversity groups that we were having back then. And I let the students run with it this time. And they ran with it, and they did surveys. And then they did something with the community. And ultimately, we were probably one of the first to go to one color robe back then, and incorporated, generally maroon with some piping and some different gold stripes on it back in the day. For that, to just include everybody and not differentiate what was going on. So I didn't say anything. I guess I didn't say enough and get enough feedback in that sense, but I did get brought to my attention. And what I learned from that is to really lay the groundwork and hear from people. So I will ask a lot more than I tell now in that sense. And in the end, it worked out well. Years later, albeit years later on down the road, and now you're seeing a lot of, single color gowns in most ceremonies in that sense to really kind of come full circle where almost everybody then follows suit. And if you didn't follow suit, it was like you were on the other side of that sense. So did learn a lesson on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this sounds like a great follow-up question. Being a public official may invite criticism and sometimes hostility from those that don't agree with decisions you've made, and sometimes requires leading a district with a divide in opinion. How do you manage that type of feedback and situation?
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate enough to get to this point in my career and do this for a long enough time where you develop a little thick skin
Mm.
in that sense. And I would imagine, but we all have different levels of it, I will say, right? All of us do. And I know that mine's a little thicker than others in that sense. So that's pretty good. But one of the things that I'll touch on here and then some other questions later on will be empathy as well too, and understanding where people are coming from and what they're dealing with. But as I say, for all the people who walk through the door every day, our teachers, our students, everybody comes in, we hope, most smiling, right, happy to be there for the day. Some days aren't as good as others for some people, depending on what's happening at home. But you never know what's going on with somebody's life at home, right? We don't know whether a parent is sick, whether a child has substance abuse, right? Whether somebody is not doing well in another sense. But they're at work and they're trying their best. There's a great video I showed our leadership team this winter. And it would be one that I would share with you about empathy. And it talks about, kind of shows people walking around in different spots and with little tags over their heads of this person is just dealing with this person just got married or just got engaged, right? Somebody just lost a baby. I mean, but a lot of times people are just walking by kind of normal. You don't know what somebody's dealing with. So I think you have to be empathetic. But when you say that we invite criticism, I don't think public officials ever invite too much criticism. I'm not looking for it. You're not looking for it. It comes. All right. I think people have become freer in their language and how they approach all of us, whether it's on social media, in terms of what they can say, right? And hiding behind sometimes anonymous things, sometimes not even anonymous, but not having to confront somebody face to face. And as I mentioned to you that not everybody's gonna like all our decisions, but if we explain them properly, if we take the time and we lay out a progress or a path that we're going to follow and let people know that they're generally in the best interest, that's why we're doing it, right? I don't come to work to make bad decisions, right? You wouldn't hire me to come in to make bad decisions. You're hiring me to make good decisions. I always say that none of my teachers or people I work with wake up in the morning and come to work and think, I think I'll do a poor job today. And that's it. No, we all, I believe, go to work thinking we're doing a good job. There are times, unfortunately, where we have to tell people, maybe you need to change some things to do your job a little better and in a little different way. And I can have those conversations with people. But in terms of the public, I would invite them in. Because a lot of times, as I mentioned in some of my other comments to you before, they want to be heard. They want to be heard. We will listen to your comments. Absolutely. And we still may make some different decisions throughout the course of what we do. But we did hear you. There's no doubt about it. And the committee decided that this was the best way to move forward for them. So explaining, and then sometimes, unfortunately, knowing that even when you do that, you still won't make some people happy. And at some point, you do have to move on. We do know that.
Okay, so what specific skills and strengths do you feel you offer to this interim position? And what do you see as the main goals for the district over this next school year?
I think some of the specific skills and strengths that I bring to you will be relationship building, visibility. As I mentioned, as I've gotten older, and I still think I'm young. I still have plenty of time to work, but I think in a good way, I've become more empathetic and more understanding of what people go through in life, and that's allowed me to hear a lot more different decisions and opinions is what I mean, and make different decisions on people. I do think people deserve second chances in life. I think my wife and I have done a decent job of raising our 3 boys, and that at times there are consequences for decisions. There's no doubt about it, right? Sometimes things happen and there's consequence, but you I don't want to say they pay the price, right? But there's a consequence, and then you move on. And you don't throw that back. We don't keep dragging that decision back to them, right? And say, do you remember 5 years ago when, no, it's done. It's over. We hope we learn from it and move on. It doesn't happen again, right? In that sense. But relationship building, visibility, I'm going to know the people who are out there. I see the main goals as learning your district, leaving it in a better spot than when I came here, not coming in and working with you. I mean, you're going to kind of tell me, where it goes. When I started at the collaborative, met with the board, obviously, and they weren't looking, they kind of laid out, no, we are not looking for you to come in and fire everybody, kind of joking, right? And go in and clean house. That's not what, we don't need that, right? Had a couple different goals that we need to work on, right? One of our departments, we need to just work on our budget, clean that up in the first year. We've been positive ever since. We have a great balanced budget there. We have great support from our cities and towns, our member towns. But you're going to kind of let me know what are some things you're looking for too, in that sense. And I'll make those the goals. And as I said, helping transition to the new person coming in for that over the next school year. But my strengths will be that everybody will know me. I will know them. I'm approachable. They'll see me out at the schools. I mean, how can you not be out at two schools, like right down the street, really, right? In that sense, great restaurants, right? Nice little cultural district in that sense. So a lot of great things happening. Gotta get to that Mexican restaurant. I haven't been there yet, but yes, and I know they've already told me, they're like, hey, if you get that guy, yeah, right. So listen, I'm doing my homework. You're doing your homework on me, right? We're all doing our homework on each other. In that thing, there's no secrets anymore. So I hope to bring those things to Easthampton and really help lead you to where you have been. Because you've been there. You've been a stellar district. And it doesn't mean you're not now. It's unfortunate that, you're in international news for different things versus, as we touched on before, the 2 gold medals that were run, one by the band and chorus at the festival, right? The We the People 13th place competition, right? The softball team that plays tomorrow and with a chance to go to the quarterfinals, right? You have a lot of great things happening. Your principal does daily announcements, and well, Bill does at the high school every day, and then reads off birthdays. I mean, that is awesome that things like that happen, right? You can do that in a place like Easthampton. It's hard to do. I'm not saying you can't do it in bigger districts, but it's hard. It's hard to do when schools get to be 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 students, right? There's still personalization that you can try to do, but you guys definitely have it down pat, right? Mountain View is doing so many field trips this week. I mean, they need to go everywhere. You have great support from your PTO. I know the bingo was just pushed off due to the rain the other day, but you have great support, right? For the PTO bingo coming up this Friday night and different supports. And you have step up day this week. The 8th graders going to the high school. Just a lot of good feel things that are happening that if people hear more about, it might increase your school choice, keep people in who are leaving. And I think we need to talk to people who are leaving in that sense, not to question them in a bad way, but just to ask, why? Why do you think that someplace else might suit your child better than us here? And maybe we can learn from that and make some changes. May not change them that time, but it may change us to get somebody else down the road to do that. So those are some of the things I think that my strengths are and where I would leave the next person coming in.
Thank you.
What do diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you, and how do they relate to the school environment? Please explain an instance where you personally advocated for diversity, equity, or inclusion in a workplace.
I think that would have to be taken together, and they're not separate. At the collaborative, we in the winter time, late winter, early winter, sorry, just hired a DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. We added B, but for belonging, because many of our districts felt that was a really strong statement to belong, to have people belong. So we just hired a DEIB coordinator. And she's doing a great job right now, meeting a lot of our districts, not only working for us in collaborative, but then our districts as well too, where they meet. We have many of them in different spots right now. We have some that have already done equity audits. We have some that already have some teams that are meeting. And then we have other districts who are kind of like, yeah, we know what that means, but we're not ready to bring that into our district yet because some of our residents don't think we have a problem. And we don't have a problem, right? So you're meeting people where they are in that sense. But where it meets and relates to the school environment is that, we need to be there for our students. And we need to let everybody know that they're welcome and that they're accepted and that we're going to work for them and stand up for them in that sense. Right? We all have bullying policies. We know that. We all have Title IX things that we have to follow through if things happen. There are a lot of different things that have to go. We need some nice social, emotional places for our students to be, some safe places for our students that they know adults with your advisor groups that you have, that they have an adult that they can talk to and relate to. Parents send their students to us to be safe in schools. I'll get a question sometimes from parents. Can you guarantee, like you'll hear different things. Unfortunately, in the news, we've all heard of terrible things happening at school. And when that happens, inevitably, right, the next day, somebody's going to call and ask, what are you doing at our school? And this is not just about a school shooting, which seems to be dominating some of the news. Some of it are hate crimes that are happening in schools, right? Things on the streets, whether they're beatings, they're shootings, things that people are seeing out there. What are you doing in our schools? Is my student safe? Can you guarantee my student is safe? Well, none of us can guarantee 100%. But we know we can't. But we can do the best we can, and we can try. And I guarantee the parents that we will try. I'm going into a school every day, right? Into a building. You're walking into buildings. We're not walking in to be unsafe. Our teachers are front line, right? Our secretaries, our custodians, right? The cafeteria. We want it safe for everybody. Our students, you name it. One instance where I've advocated for this just happened actually. So this year, we did some workshops in the last couple of years where I'm currently working with Jeff Parati from the state Department of Ed, and brought him in to really bring some more awareness to our teaching staff and our working staff in the building. Not that they weren't aware, they're aware, but just to bring it to the forefront in that sense. Because the majority of what we do for teaching is the career tech and special education program at that sense. And some of our teachers had a little tough time of comprehending and coming to grips with, they comprehended it, don't get me wrong. Coming to grips with the fact that students may want to be called different things, different names, or be non-gender. And our student information system now allows us to do a lot of different things, right? And let people know. So our guidance counselors did a great job that day with Jeff, really explaining the laws and what were going on. And we did some nice group sessions. That was a couple of years ago. So we really kept that work going. We have a Safe and Supportive School grant program at the collaborative that we're working with from DESE. And we're also working with the CRPL, which is Culturally Responsive Practice Leadership Academy. And we're doing that. So we do a lot of walkthroughs right now. We've had the state come in and they'll do state walkthroughs. These are I don't want to say non-disciplinary, but they're non-judgmental walkthroughs in that sense to help us get better, whether it's with signage on the walls, right? Is it showing diversity? Is it showing what our students look like? And whether it's different genders, different races, different occupations that people can do. What are we doing? So one of the things we did this year was we have 9, and there's one building in West Springfield, 9 single-sex bathrooms, I guess you can call them. And there used to be a label like you might have just a male and a female right next door to each other, single stall right there. Generally for staff, but people could use them. We changed all the signs to gender neutral bathrooms. Went over well, for the most part. A couple of people didn't seem to understand why we needed to do that at that point, so we had conversations with them and let them know that this is 2023, back then maybe 22. I don't think I was on the cutting edge of anything. If anything, we're probably on the tail end of doing some of the stuff that should be being done to help people, but really just to advocate for our students who were uncomfortable going into bathrooms that were labeled male and female, or that had, multi stalls, or some, as you know, and sometimes unfortunately a partition gets broke here and there, or something happened and people are uncomfortable. Our job is to make school comfortable and remove obstacles for our students, obstacles to learning. And if feeling comfortable helps somebody learn better, then come on in. Then we want you. We want to do what we can do in that sense. I did another workshop with Jeff Zoom, ironically, only a month ago. It was through the state, and they'll offer these pop-up like Zooms for an hour, like a quick little training. And ironically, there was probably only 10 of us in it. And your guidance counselor from your high school was in there as well. And then her intern. She was a student teacher or an intern for guidance counselor. They were in there. And I was pleased to hear the great things that are going on in Easthampton that she shared. And then I was actually pleased with myself a little, because then Jeff said some nice things about the collaborative. I'm like, all right, maybe she'll take that back. And she'll write it down, knowing that this was coming up. But I did not know she was going to be in there in that sense. So we're all trying to move forward and see what we can do to help students. And I think that's what we need to do. And I know you're doing it here in Easthampton too, right? But we can always keep moving and moving forward. Is there something else we can do by changing a sign on a bathroom, right? Yes, some people weren't too happy with it because they like the old ways. The old ways are the old ways in that sense. So sometimes we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of everybody.
How would you describe your leadership style, and what particular strengths do you believe that you'll bring to Easthampton?
I have an open door policy, leadership style. I think you're going to find that one of the things I don't do, so this is part of my leadership style, is to let people do their jobs. We hire some great people, right? So I'm not leaving the collaborative because I want to. I mean, I guess you'd say, in one sense, you understand that, because I love it. Love my job there. I love the people I work with. They are wonderful. And I hope that they're happy. I think from my feedback, I hear from people that they're happy with me too. I let them do their job. But I am not the director of special education. I am not the business manager. I am not the career tech director. I'm not the high school principal, right? The maintenance director. I might know a lot about those things, but we hire people to do their job. So you'll find that I am not a micromanager in that sense. Though sometimes in my head, and I've learned to suppress some of these thoughts, sometimes I think some things take a little too long. In that sense, I was waiting for a question on, jokingly, if you asked me what one of my weaknesses was, right? The standard, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And I was going to say, sometimes I do believe in my head that we could hustle along and a few different things here and there, but I do honestly keep those in my head, because I know people are busy and they're doing their jobs. And sometimes I'll ask questions to see if I can prod some things, and it does always help sometimes if your superintendent asks. Sometimes things get moved up the pile just a little in that sense. But I'm not going to be a micromanager in that sense. I'm going to let people do their jobs. And hopefully if they have questions, they'll come to me and see what I can do to support them. As I mentioned, by walking around, I see what I can do. Oh, can I get you? Oh, you need more paper. Jeez. Okay, because the order just got lost somewhere. Well, we can call Staples, and guess what? They'll be here tomorrow, or sometimes even today, right? In the old days, you remember we used to stockpile paper? My first job of teaching, we were assigned like a ream of paper every so often. And I had to bring that to anybody remember Dittos? Maybe the purple, right? Yeah, there you go, Nicole, you got it. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that, right? And the smell, how they smelled, right? Bring you back to when you were a kid. But we used to have to bring our own paper, and then we got copy machines. But we only used the black and white copy machines because they were cheaper than a color or something like that. You still have to bring your paper. So you bring your paper to the copy machine, and then if somebody left theirs in there, oh, jackpot, right? Sometimes you just took the extra paper because you literally put your paper in, made your copies, and then took your paper out. These were in the days of rationing back in the day. So I hope we're not there in that sense. But if we are, times, what can we do just to make people's lives just a little easier in that sense? So I think you'll find my leadership style is letting people do their jobs, but being there to support them and being open so that they can tell me, hey, this is what we need. You gotta see if you can push the school committee a little, or talk to the chair or something like that. And we just need a few more dollars here or there. And what you spend your money on, that's what people know is that your priority. You know that, right? You've heard that before. You can say, oh, you prioritize something else, but when you're cutting something there, and I know there are finite dollars, we understand that, but priority is where money gets spent in that sense. So trying to help people prioritize what they need and letting them do their job of being there for support. And at times, if they need a nudge or some suggestions or some assistance on how maybe they could, navigate a process, that's what I would be there for.
Last question. Special education is important to a large segment of our district. What is your experience with special education, and how would you apply it as an interim superintendent?
Special education is very important to our district. You're about 22% special education right now, just a little above the state average in that sense. We need to meet students where they are and where the process is. I've experienced special education, obviously working in schools as an administrator, as an assistant superintendent. I have a wonderful special ed director right now. But I've also dealt with it as a parent in that sense too. And it can be a daunting process. I was walking by knowing I was coming here about a week or so ago, I walked by a team meeting the other day, and I was not in it, but I walked by, I was in a conference room, and there had to be 10 people in there from, as you know, right? My principal was in there, a team chair, there might have been a psychologist in there, a couple teachers were in there. Oh, and like one parent. And so it made me realize and start to think, because back in the day when my wife and I had to go to a meeting, even though we're in the business, my wife's a teacher and not special ed, but we're in the business, and how daunting it can be to walk into a room of 8 to 10 people. And sometimes I don't think the people in there try to make it adversarial at all. But it can feel that way if you're a parent, because it is, you're asking for something, right? You're asking for what you believe is best for your kid. And the school wants to work with you too, but we know there's some limitations at times. Like there's not a finite or an infinite pool of money at the end of the rainbow. We know that's not there. I've seen the rainbows end, and I've got to the end of them, and I didn't see that pool of money in that sense. So we have to work together. But for parents, trying to ease that, it made me think, we started to talk about how can we ease that process. When a parent comes in, so when I had to go to those for my own children, I was calling in favors, talking to different special ed experts. Okay, what do I need to do, right? How do I counter it? They say this, they say that, right? Because I don't do this every day, right? And we know that sometimes if you're a parent, the other side of the table does do it, maybe not every day, but they do it a lot. And that's kind of their ball, that's their game that they're playing. And I'm not saying it's a game against them, but it's their job. There. So trying to make parents at ease in this process and meet students where they are. And how do we know if special ed programs are going well? Is the student growing? But they don't all grow the same. Different people take different time for a lot of different things. I liken that to a lot of tests that we take as adults. Right? The bar exam. Some of you may know some lawyers in that sense. You take it one time and fail, it doesn't mean you're done forever. And you can take it again and again and again. The MTEL test for teachers. Right? Take that many times. Driving tests for our students. Not that generally I say students, but whenever you start to say it, you can take that over and over again. Yet sometimes in education, sometimes I think we're getting better in our grading policies, right? And what we do, and letting people rewrite or take different times or doing different things for what's best for their learning styles, right? When giving an oral test or a verbal test or a written test. In that sense, we need to incorporate a lot of those things and let people know we're going to meet you where you are. And if you've grown, if your parents are happy, right, you've met certain standards and you're growing, you may not be growing at the same rate as the class. So I might have mentioned to you, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. As I mentioned, right, 7 of us now kind of in the field, 5 really educators and 2 also in schools right now. We all went to college, took different paths. Some went straight through to 4 years. Some went to a 2-year, to a 4-year, to a 2-year. Some went into 4.5 or 5, right? Some got out early with honors. We need to meet students where they are and work with their parents and make sure they're growing in that sense. One of the things, we talked about special education here. Special can kind of go both ways too. What about our gifted students in that sense and being special? I know we generally are talking about students who might need some remediation or on an IEP, but you're meeting some students where they are with college classes right now, some gifted and talented, I would call that program. Some agreements, we can have some agreements with our local community colleges to save money. I mean, I know you've had students go into their freshman year of college, if they're going wherever they're going, many times with 3, 6, 9, 12 credits if they've taken AP classes or they've taken dual enrollment, those types of scenarios too. That's special as well too, because they're doing really well. But in terms of special education, probably what it was meant, I would think, is to really, open up and look at our grading practices and looking where we're meeting students and having different ways, different assessments for our students and talking with their parents. Are the parents happy with what's happening? And getting feedback, right? Having constant communications, having portfolios, going home to students, communicating, whether you're using Dojo or different types of scenarios, communication methods with the parents, and having them in. One of the other groups that I'll quickly touch on here, excuse me, is our EL students as well too. Right? We're educating everybody. At the collaborative, we just this year, at the start of the year, before the start, hired an EL teacher because a lot of our districts are now sending us more students where English was not their first language. And we needed to help with, we already have inclusion teachers there to go into a lot of our programs and help with any IEPs. But now we were hearing more and more, hey, there's more EL students moving into our districts and they want to go into career tech or special education program. Can you help them if they're over on your site? We can. We can help them now. So we're trying to meet the needs of all of our students and help them the best that we can. So I would apply that as an interim superintendent by still fighting for students. I'm not going to fight knowing that I'm out the door. I'm going to fight that I'm here for them for the year.
Any follow-up? All right, so now is your chance is there anything that you wish we had asked you that we didn't ask you, or any last things that you would like us to know?
I think that just in closing, just like to say thank you. I want to acknowledge everybody I met with, excuse me, on that day when I was here touring around your building. They were very gracious, showed me all the great things that were going on from your schools to your central office here as well. And as I mentioned, we kind of joked about it, that superintendent search fatigue. We know it's out there, right? But people are struggling and they're pushing through, and they're doing all this in the midst of doing their real job every day, right? And then entertaining people like myself coming through there. But it was great to do that, then to see teachers after school. I got a chance to talk with your director of food services while they gave me a great salad that night, and the director at the school. She was there herself and showed me the kitchen a little and seeing what's going on there. What an offering to be a kid in school today. You think about what we used to eat. Well, I don't know if you ever ate public school lunches, but I did. And fish every Friday, right? Back in the day, pizza or something like that. This and that. They have a great smorgasbord, is what I would say, of offerings for them. But then meeting the parents that night, and they were coming in as well too for the Dollars for Scholars. That night was the night that they were giving out the awards and doing a lot of things. So I saw a lot of parents and teachers coming in. Everybody had great things to say about what's going on. So I want to thank you for that. As I mentioned, I'd be looking to do this to help Easthampton, because I think that I have something to offer to you. This is my first interview I've done in years. So hopefully I've done well. And I do kind of say, you go through this and it's been a little over an hour. When I get in the car, I'm going to think, I should have said that. I forgot to tell them that I'm the greatest and I did this or something, right? Because you only get a chance to get, like, it's kind of tough, right? Always talking about yourself and what you've done. And when I say I've done things, I will clarify and say that I'm doing this with teams, right? This isn't getting done all by me. I know that. And hopefully you understand that. When we use the word I, sometimes it's because we're sitting here. I try not to use I too much, and I don't think I did. It's really a lot about we who have done it. Any success I've had really has been from the great work that the people I've worked with have really done in that sense. So I do hope that you speak with my references, because the history is really hard to get out that hour plus. Like I said, and who's my voice right now, right? I haven't really gotten the gist of going through interviews and that type of stuff. So, but just to close, like, I do know the Pioneer Valley really well. I do know the state. I did talk to the commissioner a few weeks ago when he had just come out here a few days before to visit your system. And he and I were chatting, and he basically said, good luck. Yes, he mentioned that he was out here in that sense, right? But you hear from a lot of people in that different things. Like, why would you want that? Why would I want it? Because I think you need it. You need help. And I think I can help you in that sense. And as I mentioned, I don't seek the limelight. You're not going to see me all over the news. You're not going to see me out there. If I need to be, I will. And I'll speak, positive and great things about Easthampton, but we'll get that limelight to the students and the teachers where it deserves, and where the rubber hits the road down there, and the people who are doing all that in that sense. And one of the last things I think that I've been really proud of in my correspondence is hopefully I can help some of your teachers or your principals do whatever they choose to do in life, whether it be advancing or something. One of the things I've tried to do in life is give back and help people progress however they want to progress, whether teachers just want to be a department head, whether the department head wants to be a vice principal, or moving on and so and so. In the Valley right now, I have many people who have worked with me in buildings that I've run who are superintendents, who are principals, who are vice principals, who are department heads, in many leadership capacities. And I think that's something that I'm trying to pass on. You just don't keep people down. You want to have people flourish and go if they want to go in that sense. And if I can give people the skills, as I said, I'm not a micromanager. I'm not going to do it. I've worked for great leaders. I mentioned two of them, and I also worked for one of our longest serving superintendents in a long time, Rick Rigi. It was 15 years in Chicopee. You don't hear runs too long like that. And he taught me a lot of great things about helping other people and giving them opportunities. So, for example, vice principals, right? Generally, people think of vice principals as disciplinarians, right? You see the vice principal because you got in trouble. And that is something at times that they need to do. But as a principal or a superintendent, and I know that your principal, I would help them to do that as well too. Hopefully you're giving that vice principal other tasks or opportunities to run. Maybe it's running the National Honor Society event so they can run something, running a school council meeting, doing different things where they're not just seen in the targeted sense of being a disciplinarian in that sense, so that they can flourish someday and move on. And I would do the same with my principals or department heads in that sense. So I do think I have a lot of experience to offer. It would be an honor to work with you in that sense. And then I think that you would enjoy working with me. I think I'm personable. You'd hear from me in that sense. I can take a hint when to stay out of your hair, when to get in your hair, and how much you want to, how much involvement you want in that sense. Been around the block doing it that way. And just in closing, I think this would be a great opportunity for both of us. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.